Hey, I've got a question here from K-Monk. Like since I did my last video answering some questions, some new really good questions have come in, so I'm like quite excited about getting through all of these. But this is a really good, really long question, so like let's just launch into it. Hey Michael, many of your games feature a sequential turn order. I'm thinking, for example, of Single Pass and 868 Hack. Often the turn order, which isn't something that is directly communicated to the player, can have significant consequences. In Jack Crawford's recent recorded playthrough of Single Pass, he spends a significant amount of time thinking about possible turn orders and their consequences. As far as I can tell, in Single Pass the turn order is randomized each turn. Did you consider alternatives, and are you happy with the result? For example, you could imagine showing the player the upcoming turn order in the UI. In my own work as a designer, I feel a bit dissatisfied when players have to understand something that feels like an obscure implementation detail, that is, the turn order, in order to play at a certain level. Do you share this sensibility? With regard to programming, do you have any advice for animating events that may have sequential dependency? In most of your games, the enemy movement animates in parallel, even though I assume the game model uses a sequential turn order under the hood. In general, do you try to keep the discrete game logic separate from code that handles rendering or animation? Thank you, you're a huge inspiration. Damn. Okay, so that's many questions mashed together in paragraphs, and I'll see what I can do in this little cave here. Okay, so the first thing I think about is, what do the classic roguelikes do? And many of them, I think, just have a fixed turn order. Like, all the entities in the game are in a single linked list and it iterates through them. When it gets to the player entity, then it offers the input, player waits until the player does something, and then it continues on through the list, and it just loops through the list over and over until someone dies. Until the player dies. If someone else dies, they're just removed from the list. Until the player dies. And that works completely fine. It's completely fine to have a fixed turn order in those games. It really matters. It's invisible to the player. You don't know that Goblin 1 moves before Goblin 2 because you just see them all move and then it's your turn again. It doesn't matter. Some of them, especially the more fantasy epic big RPG roguelikes have, when I say roguelike, I mean roguelike, just to be completely clear. So the more RPG influenced statty ones have, like, sometimes there's a speed characteristic that maybe depends on your agility or your encumbrance, how much you carry. So like maybe this creature moves 5% slower than this creature, and that's like a energy counter. Like every tick, each thing gets its energy added up, and then when that reaches a threshold, then it can act. And what that means to the player is that essentially sometimes some creatures move twice, which is fine, I guess. Like in my games, it would make a huge difference, because like the orc gets 2 attacks this turn, like that's the difference between life and death. But in those more fuzzy statistical ones, it doesn't so much matter. It's just having 5% extra speed or 5% extra damage do sort of the same thing. They just mean that it's a slightly spikier, squishy ball of and that's fine. sometimes some actions take different amounts of time. Like in NetHack, I know there's a timing system like that where eating food takes longer, and then you might get interrupted eating the food, and then you have to have the partially finished action stored up so you can fight the enemy and then resume eating the food. And it's like a lot of bookkeeping, but it's, yeah, whatever. So my games are kind of, in general, more zoomed in, and yeah, I found 868 Hack was the first, like, Zaga 33 was on a 9x9 grid, and it was like somewhere in the middle, but when I went down to a 6x6 grid, I really started to see it matter. Because you have quite a few enemies in narrow choke points, and whether this one or this one moves over the entranceway of this little passage determines which one you encounter first, which determines what you want to do with the abilities you have. It really matters what order they move in. And so a fixed move order was hidden information that is affecting the game. And that felt bad, like that if you if you manage to observe them over the far corner of the map, work out which order they're in, then when they're coming closer, you might be able to get an advantage by knowing that this one's going to move towards that one, and it's just like a headache. Like, yeah, it felt bad having there be this hidden information that, in theory, you could partially deduce that's affecting the game. Hidden information that you can partially deduce that affects the game sounds great, actually, now that I say it. So it's like, it's not, it wasn't what the game was about, right? Like, you could make a game that is about deducing what the enemy's move order is, and that would be potentially a good concept to base the game around. But yeah, in 868 it was feeling like there's this arbitrary thing that is an internal detail that doesn't matter, doesn't feel relevant, that's affecting what happens. And in that case, I prefer to make things random. Yeah, I could have just left it as there's a hidden information. Randomness and hidden information are very much equivalent. Yeah, it just seemed fairer to shuffle at each turn. And yeah, like, so as K-Monk says, I could have made the list public, and then, like, in the situations where it matters, you could work out who's going to move first. I could make it public and shuffle it every turn, right? Why not? The thing is, 90% of the time it doesn't matter. And like the bigger scale roguelikes, they don't care, because 99.9% of the time it doesn't matter. And my games, because we've focused in a bit more, we've got a small grid, we've got often no free ability to wait, which means it makes more difference. Details of who moves when, who's going to get the first hit, and then lower numbers of hit points, so that getting hit once matters more. These are ways of focusing more on the precise details of the interactions, and that makes a detail like this matter in a way that at a more zoomed out level it doesn't. And yeah, so it matters, but it doesn't matter all the time. And yeah, so if I showed you the move order, then that introduces element of calculation. Like, you have that information, you expect you want to use it, so then every turn you're going to be like checking and comparing. And it doesn't matter often enough for that to feel like the game to me. Like, I would be really happy if I found a design where it matters every single turn what order things are moving in, and then like you see the list, or like you shuffle this every turn, or you don't, it's random, but like you're thinking about it every turn, and then you could have an ability like swap these two creatures in the list. Like, you know, if I offered you in Super Pass an artifact that gives you the ability to swap two creatures in the turn order, would you ever take that? It's just not significant enough. Like obviously you could ever gain an advantage by it, but the fact that Jack has calculated it out and sometimes finding it makes a difference, then yes, on those turns where it makes a difference, he would want to use that ability. But like, how much would he pay for it? Like, sometimes like flipping the order would mean that you get a hit on this one instead of this one getting the first hit on you, so it saves you 1 hit point. You wouldn't pay 1 hit point for that ability if it's only to save you 1 hit point. So it's like, there's a percentage of turns that matters, and then there's an even small percentage of turns where it would be worth paying for it, or choosing that ability over something else. So it's, yeah, I'd like to see a game where the turn order matters constantly enough that those kind of abilities are relevant. And maybe I'll design one. But single pass is not it. Yeah, Jack is emphasizing that because it's relevant at the level he's playing at. But for most players, most of the time, it's not the main thing to be focusing on. And yeah, that's really the thing for me. Like, a game has layers. You start playing the game, and you have a certain level of understanding. Like, maybe there's relevant tropes you know from other games, but you're at the level where you're first playing the game and learning it. The things you're thinking about, the things that are important to you, are not the same as what an expert player is thinking about. And so I would advise anyone seeing Jack's videos, like, they're great, they give you an idea of the depth of the game. The things he's thinking about are mostly not the things you probably want to be focusing on as a beginner to be having a good time. Like, that, yeah, I think turn order is one of them. Like, it's so the question of like dissatisfied when players have to understand something that feels like an obscure implementation detail in order to play at a certain level. I think it's great when a layer of the game can be invisible to a beginner, so that the beginner can focus on learning the other things, learning what's at their layer, and then it can unlock to another level when they've acquired that understanding and it becomes relevant. And yeah, I try and think about this when I'm designing games, like what information needs to be exposed because it's relevant when you're starting to play the game, and what can be a bit more hidden away so that you're not getting distracted by it. I'm not necessarily doing it right. Like I love this concept, and I love when games do this well and unfold into new layers of complexity as you play them. And so I try to do that with mixed success. Again, I'm going to talk about Race to the Galaxy a lot sometime, but Race to the Galaxy is the game that I've played that had the best experience of unfolding new layers of complexity as you play it. It's just really smartly designed like that. Like, it's just in the cars, in the village, like, yeah, that's beautiful. Okay. Yeah, so I think if someone is starting playing single part and they're paying attention to what order creatures are going to move in, they're going to have a more stressful time trying to take that into account. Then they're not going to gain much by it. Like the mental resources they spend thinking about turn order could be much better spent thinking about wand effects, maybe. And yeah, I'm amazed by Jack's work. Like that thinking about those things at that level can get you 1,000 extra points. What? But they're not going to get a first-time player 1,000 extra points. And putting it on the screen, like displaying the move order on the screen, would like, whatever you put on the screen, people think is important, so they're going to pay attention to it. That's my taste. Yeah, a lot of games put vast swathes of irrelevant information on the screen, and you start playing and you're like, yes, I've got a sword, yes, there's an orc, I can hit the orc with a sword, and also I have plus 4% resistance to non-magical fire effects because I'm a praetor of the unseen keep. Like I don't care. You know, when you're at an advanced level, yes, like adding 4% or something, like, it's a detail that you can get some edge from, but it's not usually the focus of the game. And yeah, a lot of RPGs, like, overwhelming information on the screen, and like you just have to guess. Like, okay, I think these three things matter, and the rest of the screen I will like have tunnel vision and ignore until I have to look at it, and then I don't like that. I prefer to have less information on the screen and gradually understand more details as you play, rather than have all the information on the screen and also gradually understand as you play, but just like feel a bit stressed that you're not understanding it for most of the time. That's my taste. That's not everyone's taste. That's the answer to that. Oh, if I sidetrack, well, on track, that's a different point. If I randomness reduces the need for calculation sometimes. Like, that's too strong. Randomness. Right. If I had, like I said, a fixed turn order, and you could deduce the turn order, then to play optimally, you'd have to be. Yeah, you could ignore that. You could perfectly ignore that, but to optimize, to get the best possible score, you should be paying attention to that. And having it be random means that you know it's random. Like, it takes away a thing that you have to pay attention to. that in this case I feel wouldn't be a fun or interesting thing to pay attention to. Like, separately, you can design a game where that is the amazing thing to pay attention to, but like, we choose our focus. Having it be random means, it's just random. Like, it takes the pressure off. If I showed you, if there was a fixed list and it was hidden, then you'd be having to do little calculations to try and work out. If I showed you it, then you wouldn't have to be working out, but you'd have to, like, to play optimally sense, be working out the details from it every turn, and in the 5% of turns where that matter, getting your advantage. In the 95% of turns where it doesn't matter, just having done that calculation for no reason. So having it be random takes away some of that calculation. Like, you can do it if you want, but even if you've worked out all the possibilities like Jack does, and worked out what's the best move in each situation, it still just comes down to a random roll. You can't like, it limits the amount of advantage you can get by calculation. Like, you still obviously can, but it takes some of the pressure off, I think. But if I randomized the order every turn and showed you it every turn, yeah, so then you'd have to do the calculation every turn of where they're going to move, given you have that information, given they might still make some random choices themselves. I would rather just, like, take that work off the player and just show you each turn where the enemy's going to move next, right? Like, that would be cooler. You see the positions everyone and the position they're about to move into, and then but then of course it still matters, like, once they've moved, like, where are they going to move the turn after that, and that's going to depend on the shuffle. So do I want to show the entire predicted like, yeah, but yeah, that could be a cool power up. See enemy's next move. That would be cool. Yeah. Okay, what else? What else? I want to say, I took some notes because it was such a big question. I got my notebook here with some notes. Yeah, so I am trying to have there be hidden layers of the game that unfold as you get better at it, so that there's a nice experience for a beginner, and then a nice experience for an intermediate player, a nice experience for an advanced player, and those are a bit different because you grow. I haven't necessarily done a great job of this because, as we know, Singaposh was not a hit. And one of the reasons for that is that a lot of its depth is not at the surface. People get the impression that it's a very light game, and so the people who want to play something of that level of intricacy don't know that that's what they're missing out on. And this is something I've put a lot of thought into with, like, thinking about doing a sequel, which is still, it's on the back burner, but it's a big project. I don't think showing people, look, the enemy turn order matters, is going to sell them on it. Like, yeah, I want to show more of the depth up front so that people find the game attractive. I don't think turn order is the exciting detail that will do that. Like I can just artifacts and enemy upgrades and all that stuff is more the way to go with that. Yeah, like no matter how you put it, caring deeply about the order enemies move in is going to be an advanced thing. It's not something beginners are going to find fun or attractive. It's not. I'm happy to keep it away from them. Like that's me. But like if you're making a game that is relevant for it, go ahead, do something different, and that's great. Okay, about details of animation. Oh, this is important. Actually, this is important. So in A68 hack, I move, they all move. I move, they all move. Like it's animated simultaneously. In Imbroglio and Single Part, at some points, I tried having this. I did actually try having this turn order exposed and having all the enemies animate one by one. You move, they you move, they It didn't feel good. Basically, it feels good for a game to control smoothly and consistently. And in a roguelike, it's turn-based, but you still want that action response of I press a key, move, I press a key, move. Like that feels good when it's fast, responsive, consistent. If I press a key, a bunch of stuff animates, I have to wait until I can press the key again, or the key press is queued up, but like the response on the screen to me queuing the key press is delayed. Like it loses the responsive feeling that makes the game fun, I guess. That it just starts to feel bad to play. And yeah, mainly the problem with it is that it's variable. If there's one enemy on screen, then it's normal turn. If there's two enemies on screen, then it takes twice as long. Or you can stagger them, and I tried having like each one move when the one before it is halfway there, so they're compressed, but it's still. I think actually in the single pouch, it still is staggered by a few frames. Like if you slow it down and look closely, you'll see like one moves and then another moves almost immediately afterwards. That was a compromise I made on that, but I don't think it's good. Yeah, so yeah, I wouldn't want to show this information in the UI. I've tried showing it in the animations and it felt bad how I was doing it, and so I compressed it down so it's not really shown. I would like to show it a bit more. Yeah. So something I'm thinking about for the sequel is having this happen a bit more context sensitively. Like if someone is playing really slowly like Jack is, or like a beginner might be, they make a move, then we can slowly animate all the enemies. If they're press, they know what they're doing, they're off on their path, then it can be quick and instant and responsive. Like that's something I'd like to get right. Yeah, so when I was doing this in Sequential and Broglio, I was trying to find one size fits all solution, and it like the only one size fits all solution is just make it instant and responsive, don't delay things, and that's a good solution. Like, no complaints. But yeah, I want to be careful about this. Like, maybe you put, like, if you're going slowly, you press a key, it all animates out one by one. But if you press a key, or if you're holding a key, then it quickly speeds up. And like you know, this kind of thing, if you get it wrong, it can just feel sloppy and inconsistent. So I'm planning to spend a lot of time trying to tune this, get it right, and try and like set the gold standard for how animation context sensitively responds in this kind of game, and like really like write that up and like share it so that other games can benefit from that. But that, yeah, so far when I've tried things like that, it kind of feels bad, and it's a hard problem. Yeah, what else? There was something about programming too, wasn't there? Programming advice for animating events that have sequential dependency, keeping game logic separate from render. I'm not a programmer. Like, I don't keep things like. So basically, I have a list of what events are going to happen, and it goes through the list. And if an event is instantaneous, then it moves on to the next event in the same tick. If an event takes up more time, then it